Hey, what's happening, everybody? So, this is Gerald, and this is my premiere episode of my podcast, A Psycho Nightmare on Friday the 13th. Basically, I'm going to be discussing horror movies, horror TV shows, and just the genre in general. It's one of my favorite genres. I love it. And this premiere is basically going to be a two-parter. This first part is going to be me before seeing the new Scream movie. In fact, I go in a little over an hour. That's when my movie starts. And then part two is going to be when I come back. And I'm going to do my best to give a spoiler-free review and give you guys an accurate ranking of where the Scream movies lie for me after seeing this brand new one. But before we get to that, because what's fun about that and what's fun about this minute here is that this is a recorded moment in history where I have not seen Scream 5. And that's special. That's pretty special, you know. Scream has been a part of my horror movie loving life for a long time. When I saw the first one, it was, I believe, when Scream 2 was still in theaters in, like, I want to say 97. And so I was 7. I was 7 years old. Or 8, because I think they came out in December. So 7 or 8 when Scream 2 was in theaters. And I saw the first Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer on the same night. And my sister and I just spoke about, we expected to like I Know What You Did Last Summer more, but we ended up loving Scream more. Who would have thought, you know? So Scream, I'll never forget my first time watching it, just for a few standout things. One of which, I really thought that Drew Barrymore was the star of the movie because, I mean, she was front and center on the cover. It's Drew Barrymore. Beyond E.T., I forgot what else I knew her for, but I knew who Drew Barrymore was, and it was a big deal. But I remember with watching that movie, and I had a mental reaction for real when her character got killed. Like, she sold that so well. And I say that she and Jada Pinkett for part 2, they don't get enough credit for just fantastic horror movie deaths. And what made their deaths phenomenal is that they really sold the pain, the shock, and the pain, more so the pain. I feel like a lot of movies don't capture that. They treat the stabbings like it's nothing, you know. Not that necessarily nothing. I mean, a lot of movies, you know, they still die from it, but you don't see the pain so much. You see more so the shock, but Jada and Drew Barrymore sold the pain. I'll never forget in the first Scream, I remember I knew almost immediately that the killer was Billy. Like right away. Stu was a surprise. Stu was a legitimate surprise. And the fact that it was 2 of them was a legitimate surprise that I never let go of. But I saw part 1. It had to be a good year or 2 after it came out. Like I said, part 2 was in theaters. And I saw part 2 either later in the same year or the next year. I was 8 or 9. That was a really cool experience. I saw that at one of my favorite cousins' house, and it was all of the cousins in my age group. We were all just hanging out. It was, I forgot if it was the living room or the basement, but we were all watching it on one TV. And my mom used to look like Jada Pinkett at the time. And my mom, it was either right before Jada Pinkett's character died or right after, but she did a jump scare on the whole room that freaked us all out. And one of my cousins, Lena, is still forever, but she looks just like Jada though, so it's even more freaky. And so that'll always be very special for me. I've always loved part 2 more. Part 2 is my favorite of the Scream movies. And I adore part 1. Part 1 is legendary, it's classic, it's phenomenal too, but part 2 was just more fun for me. And part 2 had a lot of the camp factor that I love in movies and took more risk. Part two, when you saw Dewey get stabbed, and that's why I love watching reactors do Scream 2, when you saw Dewey get stabbed, you knew he was dead. You thought if someone told me right after seeing Dewey get stabbed in part 2 that, oh no, he's gonna be in 3, 4, and 5, I really he really did a great death there. Courtney Cox too. I feel like Courtney Cox, she's not that she had a fake out. She did get shot in the movie though. Gail, I always say Gail, Dewey, and Sydney, what I like about that trio is they might not die in these Scream movies, but they will get hurt. They're touchable. All these killers have touched at least one of them in a stabbing or a shooting, and in some cases both. So I always appreciated that. Part 2 also has to do with being my favorite because it not only has the killer I expected the least, but it also had a fantastic performance. Laurie Metcalf as
Mrs. Loomis? What?
Billy's mother was phenomenal, and I loved that it was her. I never would have thought that that she would be the killer. It didn't dawn on me. I think it might be fair to say that Scream 2 is the first horror movie I saw where a woman was one of the killers or the killer, and that reveal changed my life. It feels like I never forgot it. I never got over it. That was always incredible to me, and I love the motive that it was Mrs. Loomis, Billy Loomis's mother. My heartbreaking for Jamie Kennedy's character, who got killed as well. Scream 2 was very special. Scream 2 is my favorite. Part 1 is a very close second behind that, and I'm happy to say that this is an opinion that it's pretty widespread. When you mention favorite Scream movies, it's usually either part 1 or part 2. Part 1 is the lead. I think more people say part 1 is their favorite, but I get it. I absolutely get it. But for me, it's part 2, and that's how it is. Part 3. The fun about part 3 is I remember when the trailers were new. I remember when the commercials were everywhere, and they were all doing press that this was going to be the last Scream, and that made it so interesting because you were so sure either Sydney was going to die or all three of them, Sydney, Gail, or Dewey, and I really thought it would be all three of them. Honestly, I remember that. Part 3 has always been, ever since part 4 came out, my least favorite of the 4 movies, and it makes sense. Kevin Williams was not the writer for this one, and definitely understandable too. They had to cut so much, and they had to tone down the deaths that they had planned because of Columbine. With script leaks, they had to basically come up with a new script or a new variation of the script every day on set. And I know that was not fun, but it was a fun movie. Even though it's the weakest of the Scream movies, it's still a fun horror movie, and it really leads into the comedy aspect, and the comedy aspect it leads into is pretty funny. Parker Posey as Jennifer in this movie is phenomenal. She's like the best thing about the movie for sure. And I always loved the reveal of the killer being Roman, Sydney's half brother that she didn't know about, and it looping back to he's the one who basically influenced Billy to kill. I thought that was cool. I always thought that was cool. And I hear now it gets a lot of hate, and I get it, but I don't care. It's still something I really like and appreciate and really think is cool. I really like that reveal, and I really also like the fake out of him being dead, only I probably wouldn't have had them check his pulse because that was a little much, but that was a great reveal. And I think we rented that one on VHS, either that or we saw it bootleg, I forgot. But yeah, I don't quite remember my first time seeing Scream 3, but I just remember the buzz about it coming out and the buzz about the kids in school who saw it first, and that was cool. Good time. That was 2000. And then, cut to 11 years later. Wait, before we cut to 11 years later, what made Scream 4 really cool is that it was shooting in Michigan. That was a really cool, there was a really cool moment in time. In Detroit, we were starting to do movies, so I did the movie Sparkle with Whitney Houston and Jordan Sparks. We filmed that November 2011. Hard to believe that was 10 years ago. Harold and Kumar 3D filmed there. Transformers. I forgot which Transformers because I don't care about Transformers. A Nightmare on Elm Street filmed scenes there. But most cool for me was Scream 4. Scream 4 filmed in Ann Arbor, the college town, Ann Arbor, one of my favorite places to visit. And I desperately wanted to be an extra. I desperately wanted to play one of the kids in high school. I really tried to make that happen, but I didn't know what to do at that time, so I missed that. It's really cool to watch that movie and see. Oh yeah, American Reunion. That's what's the other one I was thinking of. The fourth American Pie movie. They were shooting in Michigan as well. I think they've always taken place in Michigan too, so that's cool. Yeah, Scream 4. Back to Scream 4. I remember seeing that one in theaters, and it was with my sister, 2011. And I remember it was something about Jill. It was a surprise that it was her, but it also wasn't. There was something about her where, and I love Emma Roberts, and I hope this isn't seen as a diss, but I didn't buy her being a survivor and her being the new Sydney and her basically not being the killer. You know, all throughout when all these terrible things were happening, I'm like, on some it's her. If she's not killing, she's in on it in some way, and she was both. She was killing and controlling it, so that was really cool. The Rory Culkin, I remember I knew as soon as Kirby opened the door when she was rattling off all those horror movies, and the question stopped, and she opened, and he looked at her. I knew then. Speaking of which, Kirby is one of my favorite characters of the franchise too. I hope and pray that she is alive. I really hope they did not kill her off in that movie. That would make me very happy if they did not. But, you know, it's so long ago now. It's 11 years ago now. So, even if they did. Moving on. Scream 5. Been rooting on this to happen ever since Scream 4, because for those of you who don't remember, Scream 4's release was supposed to bring on a whole new trilogy, a brand new trilogy of 4, 5, and 6. And 4 and 5 were supposed to almost be one continuation of a movie. They were going to pick up with part 5 right where part 4 ends. So that didn't work out. The movie didn't make enough money, so they didn't trust in another sequel. Stupid studios. Ugh. And then they did the TV show. I did not like the TV show. I watched season 1, and that was it. I did see season 3, just because I wanted to give, since it was a new cast, they brought a predominantly black cast too, and then they brought back the original Mask. I wanted to give it a fair shot. And I didn't need to. No one needs to. The TV version of Scream is not good. For horror movies, yeah, stay away from MTV. I will say I am very pleased with the Chucky show, though. The Chucky show absolutely defied my expectations. But for Scream, I always felt, and still for other horror movies, even beyond Chucky, I would still prefer this for Chucky. HBO, Showtime, Stars, Cinemax, Hulu, something where it's not made for TV. Because with TV, with sci-fi and A&E, you have to deal with all the commercials and all the this and that. It takes you out of it. So I was against the series on MTV from that, but then all those changes. So yeah, no. But then they announced this movie, and I'm very happy they did. some expectations I have. I think that either Dewey, Gail, or Sydney, one of the three, will die. I always think that, though, with these movies. So we shall see. Isn't it so cool? In this moment of me recording this, I don't know. And when I record the next episode, I will know. I'm not going to tell you, but I will know. And this is the last time in history I won't know. I like that kind of thing. For me, it's always a thing with these franchises where it's like what you knew before you saw this movie, before you saw this season, and then what you're going to know after. And it's exciting. It's very exciting. I'm very excited for this movie. And an unpopular opinion I'm going to end this with. I'm very okay with one of or all three of the Gail, Sydney, and Dewey trio getting killed. The reason, and I know, I hear the boos. Shut up. I hear your boos. But the reason is because this is a lot on them. Do you realize this is the 5th time they've been in the crosshairs of a Ghostface killer who seems to be targeting them? This is a lot, and it was a lot for it to be 4. It was a lot for it to be 3. Damn it, it's a lot. And on some level, here, let me bring it down. I would like there to be a Scream continuation that doesn't rely on Dewey, Gail, and Sydney, because they deserve peace at some point. When is Sydney gonna get some peace? Sydney deserves peace because Sydney is a fantastic final girl and kicks ass every single time it's required, but then she gets thrust right back into this shit, and it's like I just feel for Sydney. I feel for so it's like, not to say that I'm rooting for death. My point is that it wouldn't bother me. What I'm rooting for is a Scream franchise that does not revolve around them. It of course still mentions the previous instincts, or maybe it was inspired by their stories and their real characters, and keep it in the same universe now, same storylines and all that. But I feel like there could be that new copycats could be doing this to different new characters, and so that's where I would love the series to go. And again, I'm really excited for this movie. Again, when I come back on this microphone, when I come back in front of this camera, I'm gonna know everything so far. So we'll see if this, I think that this is the plan is for this to be the continuation of the franchise, really. So like a soft reboot. But what's funny is that was the plan for part 4, so not that impressed by that, but we'll see. I've been very happy with the reception the movie's been getting so far. Yeah, I look forward to this. So, well, thank you guys very much for listening. My name is jarrylfordham. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. And I'll be right back.